This podcast is part of the Frederick Podcast Network. Learn more at listenfrederick.com.
Welcome back to Mental Health and Me. Thank you for tuning in today. I get asked a lot where I come up with the guests for my podcast, and I like to say it's whatever the universe sort of sends my way. And I recently went through an experience that I had to reframe, and I really had to look at it in a way of how am I going to manage my disappointment with this experience. It was a bucket list item, something I had wanted to do for a couple of years, and I really wanted to get it done before I turned 30. And that was to hike Pike's Peak. And I had a whole plan to do it about a year ago, and life be lifin', and so it didn't happen. And it didn't happen the way I had anticipated. So there was an initial disappointment there that I wasn't going to have this climactic finish.
You said 30.
Before I turned 30?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let me
Sorry.
So I really wanted to get this hike done before I turned 40. And I'm still in my 30s, not for much longer, but I had a plan to do this hike a year ago. And it didn't go the way I wanted because life be lifin'. And so I had this plan and I wanted this climactic finish. And I thought my husband and kids were going to ride to the top of Pikes Peak on the cog train and meet me there. And that didn't work out. And so a year later, if you're familiar with Pikes Peak, you kind of have a window to climb that if you do not want to deal with significant snowfall. And that window closes in August. You really got to get it in by August. So I was, I'm looking down at 40. It's not far from me. And I said, I have to get this hike in. And I'm like, hey, I tell my husband, I'm just going to go for it. I'm just going to go out there and hike it by myself. I'll be fine. I've hiked a lot of places. But I have this friend, and she hears me talking about this plan and just said, I'm coming too. When is this? Like, I'm coming. And I was like, okay, so we're doing this. So I wanted to bring this friend on my podcast because this story did not go the way it was supposed to. There was a lot of disappointments, but a lot of successes, but I wanted to share it with you. So Linsay, welcome to the show today. How are you doing?
Hi, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad to be here.
I invited myself as I'm wont to do.
Yes. And, for those of you who maybe this is the first episode you've heard, tune back into my episode on loneliness, right? I talk in there about just kind of going for it, doing these kind of things, like either asking a friend, hey, can I go with you to this? Or putting out there what you're going to do and opening it up. Hey, if anybody'd like to join me. But that's kind of what happened here. So Linsay decided she was going to hike Pikes Peak. We look at the calendar. We found like a weekend that worked and said, see ya, husbands. Here we go. We're going to do this. Now, you and I are both seasoned hikers. What would you say is the most challenging hike you've ever done?
I would say Old Rag, honestly. We did it this summer. It was really hot and it's amazing, but it's very challenging just because it is like climbing a Stairmaster and scrambling it took us a long time, but several hours.
Yeah, and you've hiked all over the place. And for me, a month ago, I had just hiked in Yosemite, and I did that hike with my husband. He wasn't real thrilled, but I had said, hey, I want to do the Vernal and Nevada Falls Loop into the John Muir Trail. And that felt to me like it was straight up. It was a lot of steps. And I did not realize at the time that whole hike only had about a 2,000-foot elevation gain. In my mind, it was a ton. And I could feel it in my lungs in that hike some, but my lungs did kind of acclimate. I finished strong. It was a great hike, a great experience. So looking down at Pikes Peak, I'm like, I got it. I'm going to be just fine. And if you're not familiar with Pikes Peak, it is considered a 14er, which means that it goes to a 14,000 or higher elevation. And that is a whole different experience. And we'll tell you a little bit about that. So we go out there, and the first day we went to, where was the first? Well, we went to Garden of the Gods, and then we went to Cave of the Winds.
Yes.
Yeah, and Cave of the Winds was a pretty good experience in itself. We conquered this great fear. What did we do?
The pterodactyl, the swing.
The pterodactyl. You got to look this thing up.
Please do.
Yeah, I when I'm sitting on my bed before we go to Colorado, I'm like, this looks like a good idea. I'm going to do this.
My heart is beating faster right now, even thinking about this.
Yeah, so I text Linsay. I'm like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And we get there, and I start to chicken out. And she's like, no, we're buying our tickets. I'm like, all right. And then we get up there, and this is the mistake. I knew better, but we sat there and watched a ton of people do it, which was just such a mistake.
So it is just a swing that the floor opens up under you and it releases you into a canyon and you free fall. We're watching people doing this and we're starting to think, I don't know if we can do this. But I had already texted my husband and my 17-year-old son, and they said, don't chicken out. So actually, they said, don't wuss out.
Yes.
So I had that in the back of my mind as we're starting to panic.
We watch all these people go, and we finally are like, okay, we're doing it. So we get up there. They start to strap you in. And when
I sit down so confident. I'm like, let's go.
Then I start to sit down, but you started to
Yes.
panic. So I stand back up and I'm like, wait a minute. And then when you said that you thought you wanted to get off, I was like, well, I don't know what to do because I don't want to guilt you, but it needs two people. They don't send the swing without two people. So I had to do some self-talk there. And I'm like, wait a minute. This swing currently has platform under it. We are safe. I'm going to sit down. This saint of a woman who worked there named Bree was so patient and kind. And she said, you know what? I'll just keep going through the motions and getting you guys tied in. But if at any time you want to change your mind, you can, which was really reassuring.
Yeah.
And
shout out to Bree.
yeah,
She's
there was,
amazing.
People in line were encouraging us. And I love the video. Hopefully you guys get a chance to see this video. But when the floor released and we actually went, it was incredible. I mean, you instantly love it.
I love the part of the video where she says, all right, are you guys still ready to go? And I said, no, but just do it.
Yes. Yes. So we fly through there. It was really amazing. I mean, it was.
Oh, yeah. It was fantastic.
Everything you hope for. And then just because we're who we are at the end, we did celebrate that our fake nails stayed on. Some of you can relate. I mean, we had them in. I'm like, what if these things fly off? They're going to be down in the canyon forever. Or in the canyon. So they did not. At the end, we said our nails made it.
Yes, because we needed our girly nails there was a picture I really wanted to take on our hike with our nails, like a nail girly, but a hiking girl photo, which we did get. So thank goodness. Our nails clung on for dear life, just like we did.
Very true. So I say all this to say that while we're walking around in Colorado, neither of us are struggling breathing. Everything's fine. I'm starting to feel really confident. I'm like, this is totally good. I'm not worried about it. Now, that was an unwise mistake. I should have just bought a canister of oxygen. I just really didn't even think about it. I really didn't. I thought I'm doing fine. I've been here a day, whatever. I guess I'm acclimated. We're buzzing around and I'm not having any struggles. So that gave us a little bit of false hope, but we set out the next day. We set out on a Sunday morning. We get up early. That's really important for Pikes Peak.
I think we were up by 4:30.
Yeah. We made it to the trailhead. We got a parking spot and it was dark. We had our little headlamps on. We had very full backpacks. We had champagne flutes and little bottles of alcohol to celebrate at the top because we were so confident that we were just going to nail this thing.
We may have been the only people to ever hike Pikes Peak with champagne flutes in our backpacks.
I agree. And if you're not familiar with Pikes Peak, the terrain is really not that challenging. That's one of the perks of that particular hike. And I would say that both of us have certainly done more challenging hikes. The one I just did in Yosemite had a far more challenging terrain. And so I was really confident in the terrain. But pretty early on, I struggled. I mean, I was like, I got to take a break. What the heck is going on? Like, I'm not that person either. I'm usually the person pulling people forward. So Linsay was very patient, but I kept noticing this big gap. She was getting farther from me. And then I'd say, hold up, Linsay, like something's wrong, And I kept thinking, any second now, my lungs are going to acclimate. Any second now, they're just going to kick in. And that did not happen. I mean, we did do some things right. We layered up. We packed our snacks. We did have our headlamps. We did have a rain jacket. You'll hear more about the importance of that in a minute. So I felt like we had our hiking poles. I felt like we had everything that we needed, but my lungs just told me no, they would not cooperate. So at mile 3, we stopped. There's a really cool little place. Remember the stumps in the creek?
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, how can I be struggling by mile 3 to this level? What were you thinking? Did you think I'd kick in or did you think it was going to be rough?
I did think you were going to kick in by mile 3. And I, at that point, I don't know if my lung capacity is just different. I have hiked a lot. I was just like, this is awesome. Like, I feel great. And you had already kind of warned me that like you've had issues with like your lungs kind of catching.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking like we'll get there. And there's a breathing exercise that I always do where I fill my lungs up all the way and then I take another short breath. So I was like, try that. But it wasn't kicking in. But I would say you were in a emotionally still, I could tell you were disappointed that you weren't kicking in yet, but you were still like you were good.
Yeah.
And I think we did eventually make a change where I was like, why don't you lead and
Yeah.
set the pace because I didn't want to burn you out. I wanted you to have your hike at your pace because I'm like, I was in my own world. I'm like looking at the trees and do and all of a sudden I'd be like, oh my gosh, where's Natalie?
Yeah.
So that worked out. I think we switched up after this stop, but it was really pretty. There were stumps. Obviously, it's a place where people need to take a break normally. We had already gone, oh my gosh, 2,900 feet up at that point, or was I think
Yeah, which I did not realize actually the first 3 miles. And I had read about all of this. It's not like we went there unprepared, but I just don't know because I'd never done a 14er before if I really registered what that meant. So I read this, but I just was still baffled at the effect it had on my body. And meanwhile, mind you, people are running Pikes Peak.
Oh my gosh. Talk about humiliation.
The amount of runners, I think, surpassed the walkers that day.
It was really when they were coming back down the mountain and
Yeah.
passing us where I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. That was like,
I was like, I'm glad I packed my humble pie because I'm eating it right now.
Yes. So we're seeing all these runners. I really thought things were going to kick in. And I said early on, and I did kind of verbalize this, I was like, I just feel disappointed. I've looked forward to this hike. I'm the person usually taking pictures of cool rocks or mushrooms or whatever I see. And I'm just like really relying on my poles. I mean, just plugging along. But I'm like, man, I just feel disappointed. And I try to be optimistic. And if you've ever hung out with me, you probably know I have this great love of Dr. Amen. If you don't know who he is, look him up. And he tries to help you manage things, your expectations. So if you take a vacation or something you're really looking forward to, and he says, do not get upset until the, whatever, 5th thing, 10th thing, whatever goes wrong. And so I was saying that like, okay, we're going to I'm just going to make the best of it and accept that not everything's going my way. We're going to keep kind of plugging forward. So things went decent. We made it to the 6th mile where there was a place to stop. You could actually camp if you wanted. There was a bathroom, but there was no water refills, which is the bar trail camp.
Yes, and I had read that online that there was no water. There is a stream there if you want to filter your water. But I had also read online that there's not a bathroom or water at the bar trailhead, which was false. There were bathrooms. Now they were locked, but there was a porta potty and there was water accessible. So I'm thinking maybe it's inaccurate.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it is. They don't sell water and they don't have water. But we did see people filling up water bottles in the stream, which we should have done.
Yes. Yes. In hindsight, that would be another thing. I would never hike that trail again without a purifier system.
I drank far worse water later on than the stream, which we will get to.
So we sat there for a decent chunk of time and we really ate something. And I thought, okay, I'm still believing that my body is just going to get it together. It's sort of like if you've ever run a 5K or anything. For me, the beginning's always a bit of a struggle, and then everything kicks in. And I just really believed that was going to happen. So it did not. And we are going along. And if you don't know anything about Colorado weather, it's somewhat unpredictable. The day before was supposed to be horrific storms. That never happened. It was sunny and gorgeous. We were trying to track it online, but it was gorgeous. We were hot. We were stripping our layers.
Yes. I looked through my photos from that day and it's like we start off with a layer and then we have a tank. I'd say by mile 1, we were taking off a layer and in our tank top. Or at least I was in a tank top. And I will say, going back to your Dr. Amen thing, we had kept saying, because we'd had the best weather, it said it was going to rain. It didn't. We kept being like, nothing's gone wrong. None of these, not number, oh my gosh, nothing's gone wrong. We don't have one of a 5 thing that's kind of gone wrong yet. Until I would say the first thing was kind of like getting to that halfway mark and you were still having this breathing struggle. But I don't even know if that would count as something going wrong. But probably for you, it definitely, for me, I was discouraged for you and hoping it would kick back in.
Yeah, I was disappointed, but the weather at this time was still perfect.
Yes.
So
there's like a little white cloud at the top of Pike's Peak.
We're like, we have the perfect day.
Yes.
We had anticipated probably hiking that in about 8 hours. And it became apparent that was not going to happen. So there was some disappointment there, but we still were fully anticipating that we would not need our rain jackets.
Yeah,
And
we kept saying actually, we overpacked, we overpacked.
yes.
And I remember saying, I hope we overpacked.
Yes.
I hope we don't need the things that are in our backpack.
I was just really optimistic about the weather. I'm like, this is fine. This is totally good. And I do remember one lady
Yes.
saw us and said, it looks like it's clouding up there. And I thought, what is she talking about?
I know.
I was like, I don't, they
She's
see
like,
this.
you guys better get a move on. It's clouding up. And we look up there. There's like a little marshmallow cloud just
Yes.
happily over the peak.
But she was a local, so
She knew that was an ominous warning
She was
to us
wiser than
dum-dums who were like, oh, it's fine. It's just a little white one.
So I look back at the videos. I was trying to make videos along the way, and Linsay did this as well. And I believe it was it around mile 9? Mile 9 is where we first got lost a little bit.
Oh my gosh.
So we got lost for a little bit, and a real blessing was that my husband was able to track us. And I don't even know how this worked because I couldn't get on the internet, but he was able to track me and it was so accurate.
Yes.
I mean, it was accurate within a foot. And he was able to say, hey, you're not on the trail. You need to go over to the right. And around mile 9 is this building that's like a first come, first serve kind of thing. Looking back, it's kind of in a valley. And I think they probably have that because the next chunk of miles is probably where people run into trouble with that Colorado weather.
It's called the A-frame. And yes, I remember seeing that. But at this time, it's still kind of like white fluffy clouds. We didn't really know what we were in for. We definitely should have stopped at that A-frame. But I was kind of like, we're over halfway. I don't care. We're finishing this thing.
Yeah.
But my favorite part about this mile 9 thing is there is a sign pointing directly to the left and it says Pike's Peak. So we go to the left and we go up this crazy, like we wasted so much energy scaling this, like, and Natalie kept saying, this isn't like the other trails. Like, this is too steep. And I'm like, well, I see footprints and I don't know who, somebody's up there lost. Y'all need to send somebody. That was not the trail. Her husband tells us we're in the wrong spot. I look up ChatGPT because I use that for everything on this trail. And it's like, take a sharp right after the sign. So really the arrow should be pointing straight up.
Yes.
Because the path is directly behind the sign, not to the left. So if y'all are going to go hike Pikes Peak, do not trust mile 9.
Yes, definitely check that out. And the crowd had majorly thinned by this point. So
probably because of the weather.
Yes. Everybody else was aware of something that we clearly were not. So you went from seeing all these people to it's just kind of us. And we start hiking again between mile 9 and mile 10. I mean, we looked at each other and we're like, did the temperature just drop like 20, 30 degrees? Like instantaneously. I've never felt anything like that. I was like, well, this isn't good.
It was right when we were getting to the tree line, above the tree line. It really dropped.
It was wild. And so then, so I think we might have relayered up. But along with that, all of a sudden, we just got dumped on.
Oh my gosh.
And it wasn't just rain. It was hail. I mean, a ton of hail. And then lightning, just unbelievable amounts of lightning. And so we're on the side of a mountain with our metal poles. And I remember just saying like, what are we supposed to, what's the safety rule here? Like, what are we supposed to do to make ourselves less of a target for this lightning?
I look over at Natalie. Mind you, we're wet and her hair is sticking straight up.
Yeah.
So I'm very tall. I'm 6 feet. I hunch over a solid half inch. That was my favorite part. I saw you hunching and I thought, I don't think that's going to help. But I didn't say that. At this point, we're both like, what are we going to do here? Oh my gosh. We're kind of where we were. There was boulders, but there was nothing to get under. It really was I don't know what to do. And I know that lightning can strike a face of a boulder and anyway, it was just that was really the part where I was the most scared.
Yeah.
So we kind of separated a little bit. I kind of ran ahead looking for a place to hide. And I also thought we can't both get struck by lightning up here.
Right.
So I'm like, it's not going to be me because I'm hunched over, like I said, about a quarter of an inch. So
that's right. I do remember thinking, and we weren't really even talking much at this point, but I remember thinking, okay, if she gets struck by lightning, like I've got to do CPR immediately. Like I could get her heart restarted. Like these are the things that are going through my mind. We did finally find a rock to shelter under. And I took my backpack off and it was just covered with hail, absolutely covered with hail. We had run out of water. by this
Yes.
point, which is
Yes.
also significant. I was out of water and she said, "Here, have some of mine." I had one drink and you were so generous, but you're like, "I'm going to save my water for you." And you had one drink and then you were done.
Yeah,
So
it was empty.
yeah, we were both totally out.
Thank goodness for all that hail, though, because I was eating fistfuls of it.
Yeah,
Dirty hail off the ground.
so we're at this point, and so we're obviously slowing down some, and I was able to text my husband because I knew the cog train didn't run all day. I did not realize they stopped it for lightning. So actually, we had no shot of catching
Yeah.
a cog at this point, but we did not know that.
We still had this, 4 PM deadline
Yeah.
that I do think helped us push through and finish because we
Yeah.
got the well, we'll get to that, but
So
that was our deadline, so I think that it was good that we didn't know it was running because that was a motivator for both of us to be like, "We have to trudge on."
Yeah.
So, yeah, at this point, if we're thinking about the 5 things that have gone wrong, it's rain, freezing, hail, almost struck by lightning.
Yes.
But there's more to come.
Oh, yes. It kind of went downhill. And so you're in this situation. and
Ironically, it went downhill.
there was never a time I thought someone was coming to save me. It's not really what happens on these hikes. Like, this is kind of survival of the fittest.
I don't know how they could, honestly.
Yeah, there was nothing.
They're not lugging me up the mountain, I'll tell you that.
There was nothing for anybody to do. Maybe give us oxygen, but I mean, I don't
That's true.
know that they were going to bring that down. But I was able to text my husband and I said, "Listen, let them know there's 2 women on the trail. I don't know if we're going to make the last train," because I knew there was a building up there and I didn't realize it was actually as big as what it was. But I was like, if they close this building, we're in a lot of trouble. What are we going to do when we get up there? So you were able to look up that there was a way we could pay to get a ride
Yeah.
down, but I still didn't know what time it closed. So I said, call them and let them know there's 2 women coming up. Do not close. Because I didn't know if we were going to have to shelter for how long. I remember, Linsay, you said, we cannot get stuck on this trail overnight. And I thought, no, we cannot.
No.
Well, we did.
Yeah, there was a couple times where we both were feeling like, I can't do this. And I was like, well, we have to.
Yeah.
There's not an option. We do have to.
Yeah. And
We have to finish.
towards the end of Pike's Peak, I say towards the end, but you're still miles out. There was 1 mile that it's like, oh, we see the trail go through the mountains. And I think we kind of busted it then. And
We had great time on that mile.
Yeah, I was on total adrenaline. And I think you were maybe like processing things because, you weren't so physically depleted in the same way, where I was just kind of on adrenaline. And I remember thinking at one point, like, I would cry if I could, but like, I don't have any part of my body that could give energy to that. Like,
Yeah.
This is just a matter of pushing through. And I stopped making videos at mile 10. I mean, I was so just in the zone at that point. You still.
I still did. Yeah. I honestly felt pretty good, but we were very cold and wet.
Mhm.
At least we were done with the lightning. And I was a little concerned because there was no turning back and we had to finish. You could see storms maybe rolling in again. It just there was a lot of, I don't know what's coming next. And we're pretty cold.
Yeah.
And at that point, we're now high enough where my muscles at that point did start to feel weary.
Yeah.
So I remember saying to Natalie, I was like, I can't carry you out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, no, I'm not expecting
I'll
that.
try, but I don't think I can. Yeah, that's not, you did not ask me to. I just remember going through that in my mind where I was like, I'm not
Right.
going to be able to.
We were definitely both processing this. At one point, you were up higher than me, but I did remember looking over and the lightning was parallel to me. It was out there. And I said, did you see that? And I think your back had been to it. And again, I'm just on adrenaline. So I thought, that cannot be good. And you had counted, you did the
Yes.
thing where you count in between the thunder and the lightning. It was about 2 miles. We later found out that was spot on. When we got to the top, we did survive and make it to the top and live to tell about it. But they said they had lightning hit at 0.0 miles away up there. And I'm like,
Mhm.
yeah, because it was 2 miles down right beside of us.
Yeah.
So it was right there. And we were dealing with that. But the lightning leaving was encouraging for us for sure. And I did really well. And then when we got across that place, you kind of lose sight of the building anymore. And you took a great video of where you can't see that far out from where we're walking. It was a ton of fog because we're in these rain clouds.
Yeah. And at this point, we had lost the trail a second time.
Yeah.
And it's not well marked, especially the last 4 miles. And so that was constantly a worry was, are we on the trail?
Yeah.
Because we can't waste energy at this point.
Yeah. I remember kind of like banging my poles and saying, I don't understand.
Yeah.
And that's when you got back in front of me because I was.
Yeah. I was like, I got this. And I remember turning around and saying, look, we were just down there.
Yeah.
We're here now. To be, that was like, it didn't feel like we were making progress. But if you, I would like take a second to look back and be like, okay, it doesn't feel like, we're on a treadmill going nowhere. But then you turn around and say, okay, we've come this far.
Yeah. We got somewhere that we thought incorrectly we maybe were a mile away, and I think we were 2 miles away.
We were 2, yeah. I just remember thinking, okay, 2 more hours of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was definitely discouraging. I guess it was encouraging at the same time, but I remember thinking, we thought we were closer.
Right. And I remember I think the funniest part to me is the amount of times you said, I think it's going to pass us.
I know, every single
for
time.
hours straight.
For probably 4 hours. Every time like the sun peeked out, I'd be like, okay, the storm's going away. And that got to the point where you would just laugh at me.
Right.
Because you'd be like, you are optimistic and this is not going to happen.
Right. And it was kind of even like a cruel piece of Colorado weather is that there was a chunk you could see behind us where there was no rain. That wasn't the direction we were going. But
right. But
like,
you do zigzag and so much that you're not really sure where you're going to end up in 10 minutes down the trail. Yeah, I was hopelessly optimistic. But it gave me encouragement to keep going because I'm like, okay, good, the sun's going to come out. And
yes,
it did not. It continued to soak us to the bone in sleet, hail. By mile 2, I think it was snowing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was some snow.
Our hands were freezing.
Oh, my gosh. We did not have gloves. I would definitely say never hike that without a rain jacket. I had seen that online, and we did, thank God, have that because I think we'd have been much, much worse off.
We would have had to turn around.
Without a rain jacket. I don't know what we would have done.
I probably stubbornly would not have turned around, and my body would be on that mountain.
I mean, I think that I was looking at just back at the situation. I'm like, I understand how people die. How they get stuck.
The lightning is real. Yeah, yes, there's many ways. We're wearing shirts right now that I found after we hiked that says Pike's Peak. Get lost in nature and you will find yourself. With find yourself crossed out. So it reads, get lost in nature and you will quite possibly die.
Those were phenomenal. She found those the day after and I was like in hysterics. I'm like,
it was perfect.
It makes me feel like we're not the only ones who have a Pike's Peak story.
Yes.
I think some of you listening right now might say, oh, I had an experience on a hike. And yeah, so at this point for me, I know I was on adrenaline. And one of the things that I realized even at the time was you were colder than me. And I thought, I don't feel as cold as I should be. Like I am giving everything I have to just moving. Some of the steps were small, but just continuing to move. And that was like what you pushed.
We did make that decision. I'm sorry for talking over you. We did make that decision to not stop to rest, but to just go as slow as we needed to just to keep our bodies moving. Because I did notice when we stopped, I couldn't control, like I was losing control of like my body was starting to seize up. Like my muscles were starting to get really tight. Not seize up, but I could feel that they were getting tight. I wanted to avoid that. And you did a good job of just like trekking along and it was slow, but that was definitely helped us to just keep moving even if it was slow.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was times I thought I'm taking grandma steps, but I just couldn't seem to take
better
larger
than no steps. Yeah. Better than none.
Yeah. So we definitely kept moving there. And there was a point towards the end where, and this was totally fine, is like you really started to go ahead of me. We're at the last chunk. We got to something called the 16 Golden Stairs. I had not come across that in my research that I remembered.
I feel like they trick you in leaving that part out.
Yeah.
Because my goodness.
It's 16 like, switchbacks, for those of you who are wondering.
16 horrible stairs. Like it.
Yeah, they're big switchbacks.
And maybe they're golden when they're not covered in snow. I don't know. I'll never know.
Yeah, and I was looking at that, and that also was like, what does this mean?
Yeah.
Because we are not 16 steps from the top, so what is this?
And I remember saying to you, it's only 16 stairs. We can do this.
Right, yes. Yes.
Because I was like, I wanted you to feel encouraged because I could see in your face you were like, oh my gosh. And I was like, no, it's okay. And I was like, maybe she'll lose count. And like, I don't know.
I definitely did. I just kept putting one foot in front of the other. And you started to go ahead, which was fine because at the time I'm still thinking, we got to catch this train down.
Yes.
So you got up to the top and I ended up getting up there. Now, mind you, I don't see a cog train, but that's not registering in my head, even as I'm walking across the tracks to try to get to the building. And I started my poles, and there was these grates that you had to walk on to get into the building. And as I was walking on those, my poles were getting stuck, and I thought, I can't use these poles anymore. So I stopped using them, and my legs just froze. So I'm like standing out,
It was so windy.
oh yeah, getting obliterated by the wind, but I'm not moving. My legs were like, I can't, I can't. They just froze there. So I'm standing in the rain
Yeah.
in, the wind, and the building is right there. And this woman happened to be outside, and she was under just like the overhang part. And she saw me, and this kind of stuck with me. I must have looked pretty crappy because she looked at me and said, "Do you need help?" And, not like, "Hey, are you okay?" It was
Yeah.
like, "Do you need help?" And I think I told her we've been stuck out there for hours. I don't even know, but I still stood there until you opened the door and you were like,
Yes.
"Come in the building."
Yeah, I had gone in ahead because I was we were very cold, and I thought, I'm gonna run ahead, and I don't know. I was like, just let them know you're coming, and if I didn't know. I was thinking maybe they'll bring you oxygen or something. And I go into the building. I did not realize I was this cold, and I was like, like a stroke victim. So like, I went to talk, and half my mouth was frozen. Like, I couldn't open the left side of my mouth. I didn't even know that, and I'm like, my friend needs help.
Yes.
But then I did turn around, and you weren't that far behind me. So then
Yeah.
I opened the door, and I'm like, come in the building.
Yeah. So I make it in, and I look at the clock. It's 4:39, and you could buy the last cog left at 4:40. Now, mind you, I didn't see the cog, but that just still wasn't registering. So I'm like exasperated. I'm like, "We need 2 cog tickets." And the guy looked at me like I was nuts. For starters, he made some comment about us hiking out there, and then said they quit the cogs hours ago because of the lightning.
And I was like,
like,
yeah. I was like, yeah, we know. He was like, didn't you know the weather's bad? I was like, yeah,
Yeah,
we know
we
it's
got
bad.
it. We got it. Yeah, we understand. And there was this Russian man standing there, and he sees us, and he turns out to be a local. So he knew that, hey, if you don't get this cog, you're kind of screwed. And so he right away was like, "Do you all need a ride down?"
I just, yes.
Without
Person I've
hesitation.
never met in my life.
Lindsay's
Yes.
like, "Yes, we do." Like, doesn't matter where you take us, you could traffic us. Like, we just
Yes,
need to ride off this mountain.
exactly.
So he was very nice. He gave me his jacket right away, and I remember him saying, "We're here for another half hour because there's a big visitor center up there, and then I'll find you and we'll leave." And I thought, "Okay, that's really nice of him."
We're sloshing around.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
water spilling out of our boots.
Water just ran off of my clothes. I sat down, and then all the cold hit me, and I was like just trembling all over. The EMTs come over. They keep EMTs up there who are very nice. They actually mentioned us. They usually run into more problems in the summer than the winter, but they were on it. They come over, checked my pulse ox, which was 82, which the lady who did it made a comment that that's really not abnormal up there. I didn't even care at that point. I was just so frozen. I'm like, whatever, I made it in the building.
When she said that, I heard the words pull socks, and I thought, I don't know what that means. And I was freezing. I just went and did wall sits, and I was doing high knees and just getting water on every inch of this poor visitor center. Like, I was sloshing everywhere.
Yeah, it was rough. And one of the guys who was a more seasoned DMT was like, "We have to get you out of these clothes. If you don't know anything about that, if you are in wet clothes, that's worse from having no clothes." So he just took a hoodie that I actually love this hoodie out of the visitor center, and he brings it over. He's like, "We got to get you in some other clothes." And I was layered up, but I had like a sports bra on, and at this point I'm like, I don't even care. Whatever, if I end up on a TikTok, so be it at this point. And so I was able to take my stuff off and get the hoodie on. And I just had all our bags and everything there. Had our money, had everything. I thought, if you want to rob us, I'm kind of done. Just have at it. So they take me in the EMT room, gave me a hot water bottle. I was wondering where you were at this point. I'd also wondered if the Russian guy who offered a ride had left because I wasn't keeping track of time. And the one lady was trying to help me get my boots off. And when she got them off, water just spilled everywhere. We were just soaked absolutely through and through.
Yes. At that time, I was just doing laps in the visitor center to keep warm because if I stopped moving, I was chattering. My jaw was chattering and my limbs were shaking so much. So I was like, I'm going to try to engage my quads. That's why I was doing wall sits, even though my legs were so tired. But it would, your quads are the biggest muscle and that warms you up faster. So I also abandoned our bags. There was a nice man. His name was Rocky. He was working in the building and I could see that he had his eyes on our stuff. So I was like, whatever. I got $40 in there. Like, if somebody robs me, I do not care. Although I might need that money to buy myself out of human trafficking later. But no, thankfully, the man who took us down, Sylvester,
I believe that was it. Yeah. Because I thought of
Sylvester.
Sylvester the cat. Yeah.
Yes,
He
he
was
was
very nice.
wonderful.
So they also gave me, this is kind of funny, they gave me a pair of sweatpants too. So I kind of had this joke because it had the tags on them. I'm like, well, for nearly dying, I got $100 in clothes for free.
And a Nalgene,
Yeah.
which we sadly left in our rental Jeep.
Yes, yes, that was a smart idea. He heated up this water bottle. So, we're frozen. This man, he had his wife, she was Slovakian, she was really nice, and they had their kids, and they were gonna give us this ride down. So they pull up, they were so kind, they waited for us to get out with the EMTs. They pull up in this nice, warm Mercedes.
Just a pristine Mercedes. Now, at this time, Natalie is in clean, dry clothes. I'm soaked. I didn't even wanna get in the car. I was like, "I am so sorry." I literally have water spilling out of my boots still. I'm soaked, and their car is
Yeah.
pristine. I felt so guilty getting in this vehicle, but the Anya was the wife. She sat in the middle so Natalie and I could both sit on the heated seats. Like, their kindness, it was it was amazing,
Yeah.
and I ruined their car. I apologize.
They were so nice, and now mind you, so we go back down this mountain. If you're not familiar with Pikes Peak, there's one way to drive it down. So we had, like, this tour guide, he was so kind to us. He had to be cooking because they had that heat blaring for us just to try to, get us warm, and he's telling us all about this ride down, and he was very, very kind. It was a great conversation, and we did learn a lot. So I offered to Venmo the guy. They were just very kind to us, gave us hugs at the end, drove us right back to our car. And this was really a huge blessing because had we gotten the cog does not take you to the trailhead. And
Right.
I was even thinking, man, if we get down on this cog, how the heck are we going to get back to the trailhead? We still have to walk to that or
Yeah.
beg somebody to give us a ride over there.
I just being ignorant, I did not know it was an hour down the mountain. I would have probably, like, purchased clothes and changed. I did not know. I was shaking severely almost the entire ride down the mountain, even with the heat. And I remember thinking, if we had to walk from the cog to our car, I think I would cry, like, 'cause I was so cold.
Yes. Yes. And so, the story kind of gets a little better because the next day first we go back to our hotel. So we get in the hotel, shower.
We get that parking spot directly in front of our hotel also.
Yes.
I'm sitting there at the light. We're trying to take a left into where the hotel is. There's no parking spots. I almost start to cry. A car pulls out. And I was like, "Oh, thank you. Thank you, Jesus."
Yes. You had made that comment. You're like, I literally might cry if there's not a spot right in front of this building. And then that car pulled out. I was like, man, Lord, you just watched us all the way home, didn't you? So you got a shower. We ordered takeout, got some DoorDash, watched The Office, and we're both sitting there and we're like, I'd do it again.
Yes. I do think as I'm shivering uncontrollably down the mountain, I was like, I'd hike it again. But I remember getting in the shower and turning it as hot as it could go and thinking, and I yelled out to you, "It's not warm
Right.
enough."
Right. Scalding shower.
My body, I'm not kidding, is getting cold right now, remembering this.
Yeah, The Body Keeps the Score. Another
Yep,
great book.
yes.
That is true. And we sit there and we decide because of our lovely guide who drove us down, we decide, we are going to drive it up tomorrow because you had made us these personalized shirts. Like we envisioned changing
Yes.
into these personalized shirts.
Which were short sleeve, which shows again how dumb.
right. And we're like, we're going to do this. This is going to be great.
Yeah, we hiked with our champagne flutes and champagne for literally zero reason
Yeah.
because we didn't even take a picture at the top. Actually, I did take one picture and we both look miserable.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I definitely did not. I think my husband got a hold of you to make sure we actually made it. He's like, I could see you guys made it up there somehow because he was tracking us.
It took me about 15 minutes to be able to use my hands
Mhm.
to get my phone unlocked because they were too cold. I couldn't even unlock my phone.
Oh, yeah. It was absolutely brutal. And the next day we did go up and we kind of had that Instagram worthy photo. We wore our matching shirts and we used our champagne flutes and we actually enjoyed the visitor center. But I think the best part of this was when we you have to check in and you pay to drive up the mountain and you just pick a random line and it's kind of like going through Disney or whatever. So we pull up and we see the guy, Rocky, and he was one of the people who helped us out.
It's like, oh,
day
I remember
before.
you guys.
And he's like, you all were not ready for that hike. I'm like, well, we weren't expecting this storm. And we talked to him for a while. He was so nice. And he said, do you have enough gas to get up there and back? And I said, yeah.
Stuck his head in the car to look at our gas gauge. He's like, these two women clearly don't know how to take care of themselves.
Right. I said, yeah, we got enough gas. He didn't believe me. He stuck his head in the car to check our gas gauge. And then he gave us a ticket up. He was really neat. But I was like, see, we survived. We made it. And the same group of EMTs weren't there, or I would have reached out to them. But Rocky was so
He did
kind.
say, go ahead and say hi to the EMTs because they're going to know who you are.
Right. We definitely, on
We are
that
the
particular
story
day.
that they use as a training example from now on.
Right. I would say that has to be something that they're sharing amongst the EMTs, how to handle people like us. But he was really nice. And I was wearing the hoodie. And he's like, is that the hoodie they gave you yesterday? And I said, yes, it was. So for nearly dying, I got this great hoodie. So we did have a good time. We went up there and really enjoyed it. And, we got our pictures and stuff. And because of this podcast, it's called Mental Health and Me. And I like to always point out the reflections that we have from this. And one of the things is, it's not original with me, of course, but look for the helpers. And if you look at the amount of people who helped us, especially when we got to the top, I don't know what we'd have done to get down. We'd had to pay something. I think there's some emergency transit you could pay a lot of money for.
Yeah,
but
it's like $100. I think a person, also this was ChatGPT, so I don't know if that's true, but that's what I saw on the interwebs. And
Yes.
we know you can believe everything you read there.
Yes. So, this person who didn't even know us was so kind. And I really reflect on that. I'm like, I'm going to hold that forever, that this stranger just helped us out.
Offer. We didn't have to ask because I was prepared to ask. I was going to find a woman and be like, hey, and he just offered, he offered his, he offered his jacket. He offered, just exactly what you're saying is the,
Yeah, he was so kind.
Have the attitude of gratitude really to see.
Yeah, the woman who saw me outside initially and said, do you need help? She had come in and sat with me. She made the guy who was with her go fill my water.
I saw that when I was doing my laps.
Yeah, I was out of water and I thought I need to actually drink something. And I do look at that and I'm like, man, there was people who helped us. And I think that's really important. I think that having to celebrate small victories on that trip was really important. And having to celebrate, we made it to a half a mile. We made it to a mile. And that's really not like me, but these were the mindsets, is that every step was a success when we were that deep in it.
And one thing I'll point out too is, and I know I said this a lot when we were finishing up this hike, is like we did it. Like, we would turn around and say, we've come this far. And I remember you were feeling disappointed and you're freezing. And I remember saying like, but we did it.
Yeah.
We did it. And to not like lose the weight of that just because it was a little bit disappointing. It wasn't exactly how we wanted it to go. But I think because of how challenging it was even more impressive that we did it.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And I was able to reframe. And sometimes you can reframe an experience.
Right.
So you and I kind of hike the same, of where it's like, oh, let me take a picture of this and a picture of that. And, we enjoy looking at the sites. And I had to just reframe it as, I don't have pictures of all the cool stuff I saw. You took some pictures of me, which were really nice, and I love them. But I had to say, okay, this is sort of like the same mentality someone gets when they're running a marathon. It's like putting my body to the challenge. And that's what this hike had to be for me. And so I'm 39. I was able to hike a 14er, and that had to be enough that I was physically able to do it. So I don't have all these Insta-worthy photos, and I don't have, this.
Well, we have our nail picture.
We do. We have a very early on nail picture, which turned out
from mile 1.
Just as much as we had hoped. Yes, I was struggling then, people, but I'm just able to reframe that. And I think that's important, is sometimes we can do that and say, it wasn't what I thought, but it was still really good. And here's why. And I think that also, I like to look at any experiences, what I learned. I'm proud of what I did right, what we both did right. We packed rain jackets. We had enough food. We did do the layers. We had boots. We had poles. But I did learn. I would not do a hike to that caliber ever again without oxygen and without a water filtration system.
And I do recall early on the hike, myself making a snide remark about gloves.
Yeah.
And man, did I eat those words, because I would also recommend bringing gloves.
Yes. Yeah. So
have a dry bag with some of these items in it.
Right. We did learn from this. And so anytime you're in those extreme situations, you are learning. It's maybe not the most pleasant way to learn, but I guarantee when I hike Pikes Peak again, because I'm sure I will, that I would make different choices and just come in wiser. And some of you, if you're, I get a lot of Denver listeners or a lot of Colorado listeners, you're listening and laughing at me because you understand this weather and you're like dummies, But for me, this was a trial by fire situation for my first 14er.
Yes. Trial by ice and snow.
Yes. Yes, I also think of what a blessing it was to have a support in my life, which in this case was you, Linsay. My husband was thrilled I was going without him. People ask me, "Oh, did your husband wanna go?" No. He just did the hike with me in Yosemite. He was thrilled I had a friend. And Yosemite, there was never a time where I didn't see somebody on that hike. It was
Yeah.
very populated. I anticipated Pikes Peak being the same way, and I'm like, "Thank God I didn't go by myself." Like, that would have been
Yeah.
horrifically stupid. And having a support, like having somebody when you are struggling, when I'm like, "I can't tell which direction we're going," or "I'm getting frustrated," or you need some encouragement to just kinda
Yeah.
get to the finish line, that's really important, and that can carry over into other parts of our lives. It's like, make sure you have those support people because when you're in it, that's not the time to go looking.
Yeah, I will say when I hiked Old Rag this summer with my husband and my 5 kids, who age and range from 8 to 17. And it's a challenge. If you've ever done it, if you haven't, there's lots of scrambling and it takes some teamwork for like little legs and stuff to get up and over boulders. And there was one part where this young man, he looked like he was very fit and he actually helped me get up and over this one boulder. And he said, if you wanna go fast, go alone, but if you wanna go far, go together. And I thought that was just like and then he just trotted along on his merry little fast alone way. But that really, I feel like, pertains to this really, really well. Mm.
Yeah.
We didn't go fast, but we went far, and we did it we really needed to go together.
Yes, it's this incredible thing, and everybody knows how much, like, I kinda have mentioned it's harder to find sometimes women who are in the same kind of things I am, and Linsay, you definitely are, and so it was just really a blessing how it all came together, and I think the most comical part is I tell people, I'm like, "I didn't invite her, she invited herself."
She did not invite me.
Yeah.
As soon as she mentioned it, I literally said, I'll get the hotel, I'm coming."
Yeah, it was great. And what I'm proudest of when I look back is what it took to make this goal happen. Everybody says they want to do things, but to pull your calendar out, to set your, finances aside to do something like this. My trip with last year was supposed to be about a week in Denver and I was going to hike at the end of the week and that got obliterated and so it could have been easy for me to just be like forget it. But
Right?
I said, "No, you know what? I'm really determined." And I told my husband I said, I don't want to hike in the winter, so I have this summer. I'm out of time if I don't get it in this summer. And
Mhm.
really I had to let, like, things had to just go, needs of other people, everything. I had to be really purposeful to make this happen.
Yeah, and we both are very busy. This is an incredibly busy summer for us, and my number one advice, because you also talked about how you had done an episode on loneliness, and I remember you and I talking about that, and we were saying, like, the number one thing, and you did mention this, is putting it on the calendar.
Mhm.
And that has been the biggest door opening for me for, like, being a more intentional friend, is I will actually we're old school, we have a paper calendar on our fridge, but, you write it down and, stand by your word and make it happen. Obviously, an emergency can happen. I'm not trying to shame someone if they have an emergency, but I am a type of person, I'm much more of a homebody. It is harder for me to get out and go and do things. Now, hiking, I'm always gonna come. But if I put it on the calendar, I have to do it, and I think that's a lot of women feel that way, where it's harder, and maybe just my encouragement would be just put a plan on the calendar, and it's amazing how fast it will actually happen instead of just, "Oh, we should do this one day," or "We should oh, I'd love to do that one day." Just make it happen. Put it on the calendar. That's a first step. I know it sounds silly and easy, but I'm telling you that's a big step.
Yeah, I absolutely agree because once that was on the calendar, things would come up. My kids had this
Yep,
or that, and I
exactly.
still held. I'm like, nope. My husband has to figure this out, and he does. He's fine with it. It's more me, but that I had this thing planned, and we were really purposeful. And even though it didn't go the way necessarily we envisioned, I do think it's a good telltale sign of how quickly we both said we'd do it again.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, if you are looking for adventure, you can find it, but it's probably not gonna go the way you want, and I'm somebody who hasn't always been super flexible. I used to be much more rigid, but
Mm.
as I've become more adventurous, you have to accept that these new experiences are going to come with things that are hard, for sure. It's
Mhm.
not going to come easy, but it's also going to go awry numerous times, and you have to be resilient to be able to push through that and still make the best of that
Well,
experience.
and the stories that we tell years from now are never the stories where everything went right. It's the
Mm.
stories where there was chaos or something crazy happened, and And then when you laugh about it, like those, how many times when we were sitting back at our hotel, finally warm, we were just cracking up
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about the day. If everything had gone right, we'd still talk about it, but it wouldn't be the same. There's such a value in overcoming these difficult things that crop up unexpectedly.
Yes. And yeah, and seeking adventure just really forced me into a flexibility that I don't love, but that's just, I think, life. And that's how we get
That's how we grow.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't love it, but when you talk about iron sharpening iron, that's painful, but
Mhm.
it sharpens you. It's necessary.
Right, right. And I would say I learned a great deal about myself on that hike, and that's something else that I always can hold to. And something that my mentor had told me a long time ago is that learning to accept no is a skill. We like to throw that out there, like, don't take no for an answer. Actually, you're going to be told no the rest of your life. On that day, the weather told us no. We wanted a certain thing, and it just wasn't going to happen. And sometimes your body tells you no. I wanted my body to get going. It wasn't laziness here. I wanted my body to snap in. And if the reason that the breathing was such a problem, it wasn't getting the air to my muscles to be able to keep them moving along. And I was not pleased about that, but I was being told no. And as we know, and we don't always like, your body has a different ability every day. And sometimes our body's going to tell us no. And so our best looks different every day. I really did my best, but it wasn't what I wanted. And I had to kind of accept that. I was told no that day. And listening to our bodies, I appreciate that you weren't trying to push me in a way that I was like, I got to rest. Listening to my body is a strength, not a
Yeah.
weakness. And that wasn't really something I think I could have pushed through when I was like, I got to sit down. Like, I can't catch my breath.
Yeah, I remember I just kept saying, "We'll go as slow as we need. We'll take as much rest stops as we need," because it is about the longevity of the hike. It isn't about pushing through a certain mile. So, which is parallel for our lives.
Yes. Yes, it really is. And for some people, if you say, well, I had to turn around, if you've done something like this and had to turn around, that's okay. Like, focus on what you were able to do, not necessarily what you didn't finish. And for me, I met the goal, but you just want to focus on how far you went with something. And if, your body didn't go along with it, or if you have an unmet goal, it doesn't erase that accomplishment. And so I really want to highlight that is some people, you might be someone who's trying to do something physical, or maybe you're trying to write a book, or maybe you're whatever it is you're trying to do. We do want to look at like those unmet goals as not necessarily failures. Like, you still learned something along the way. It was still of value, even if it didn't turn out the way you wanted. I also would say this is a nice little tidbit, but don't be scared off from hiking Pikes Peak. It's a great hike. I would say
Bring oxygen and
yeah,
gloves.
bring some oxygen, bring some gloves, and maybe acclimate a little longer. We did meet some people who said that it took them 2 weeks to acclimate. That made me feel a little better. I'm like,
Wow.
it's not just me. There's
A lot of time
the
off.
bikers. Remember those 2 bikers up there? And the guy said it took him 2 weeks
Oh,
to
you're right.
acclimate
You're right. I do remember
to
that.
that climate. So that made me feel a little better. A lot of people were running Pikes Peak. It was not really a challenging terrain. I think we probably could have nailed it in 8 hours and beat that storm. Perhaps if I had not struggled, I don't know, but we wouldn't have this cool story.
I will say one thing, and I know we talked about this when you and I the next day after our hike, but we got lost for about 30 minutes I don't even know. But I always joke that saved us from getting struck by lightning
Yeah.
because we would have been further up the trail when that lightning struck really
Mhm.
close. So, listen, sometimes these detours that seem really frustrating, there's a reason.
Yes, that is so true. That was such a great way to even reframe that. There was a lot of really mental strength, and you're 40, I'm 39, so we're kind of farther along, I would hope, in mental strength at this point, but
One would hope.
there's been times I would have not been able, I would have been really sour about that experience.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't the case this time. I got to tell this other story. So, as if things had not gone insane enough,
Oh, I know what
we're going to come home, and this is the Colorado Springs airport, not Denver. So, we go to the Colorado Springs airport.
it's
not
small. It
yeah.
has very few terminals.
Not big. I try to go through, I just had a carry on. I try to go through security, and they won't let me through because my hiking poles, one of them's missing the rubber tip at the end. And I said, yeah, well, I flew out with these on this plane. And they said, yeah, but you could use that as a weapon because it doesn't have the rubber tip. I'm like, well, couldn't I have just gotten on the plane on the way out here and taken the rubber tip off? Either way, he didn't care. So he tells me I got to go check these things. Well, Linsay came up with this genius way to get around
Listen,
it.
I'm a problem solver. Creative problem solver.
Now, mind you,
I'm already through security, by the way.
yeah, these people don't get a lot of action. Okay, there's not a lot of people bringing problematic things through the Colorado Springs airport.
They haven't
So
met me.
they are on it, right? They just are kind of like looking for something. So Linsay comes up with this genius idea. She texts me. Thank God she group texts where my husband's on there. And she says, I know what I'll do. I will take the rubber tip off my end and throw it to you over all of this security, and you put it on your poles.
I still think that would have worked.
My husband is like, flip it out on the text message. Do not do this. You both will be on a no-fly list. Like, throw the poles out. I'm like, I'm not throwing these poles out. They just got me through Pikes Peak. They were like $60. I've got some loyalty to them. I'm going to get them home. But Linsay's like, I really think, you're just so confident you could do it.
I feel like people should comment on whether they think that was a good idea, because I think I stand by it to this day.
Could you imagine a projectile just coming across?
I don't think they would have noticed.
Well, I did go. I will say Southwest, shout out to them. They did just wrap them up and check them for free, which was really nice. But I thought, man, if we get all this way and like that's what does us in, is this
a little piece of rubber flying through the air.
Getting these hiking poles home, with this hiking tip. But, I hope you're honest with yourself in areas you struggle. For me, it was my lungs. I knew that going in, but I probably should have been even more honest. I probably should have really expected a hardship. And I've worked out my whole life. I exercise regularly. I'm really healthy. Even the next day, neither of us, our legs were hurting.
Yeah, I felt great. I was actually very surprised how good we both felt.
Yeah, my legs felt great. My shoulders were just a little sore from the hiking bag.
That's true. My lats were a little sore.
But yeah, not much. But it was just like my lungs. And so really kind of looking at that, if there's an area, and it doesn't even have to be a physical area, but if there's an area you struggle somewhere, just kind of sitting with that and saying, what can I do to prepare a little better? And that's something I took away, is that I would love to do another 14er. At first I said I'd never do another one. Now I'm like, I could do it. I could totally do it. But I would not be so foolish to think that I could do it after being in that area for a day or two. And I would definitely never try it without oxygen, friends. So I know you Colorado listeners are getting a good laugh at this podcast.
They probably can't even listen to this one.
I know you've probably just been like rolling your eyes. But I do appreciate you tuning in today. So thank you very much for listening. Check me out on Instagram at Natalie Souders _. I also have a TikTok, and it's not super exciting, but you just might find some videos from our experience on Pikes Peak. Thanks for listening. Until next time.
Live radio, local podcasts, the Frederick Podcast Network at listenfrederick.com.